that and then the second right. If you go down there over the traffic lights, another 500 yards and you'll find the Burger King. What he or she would say to you is, they would say, I am the way. And they would take you and they would lead you to Burger King. It's obviously not going to be Burger King. You understand that, making that. But they would lead you to that place by saying to you, I am the way. In other words, it's not so much following the directions and the instructions of somebody as it is following the person. And so here we're beginning to unpack and understand that when Jesus says, I am the way, he's not giving us so much an instruction manual for life, which is often the way that we view the scriptures, but rather he's saying to us, I am the embodied living God. Follow after me. And so I want you to bear that in mind and think about that. Because all the characters in the chapters that we've read today, which we're going to look at in a moment, have responded to the voice and the call of Jesus, who said to them, come and follow after me. Now, I don't know whether you have ever been in a situation in life. I'm sure that from time to time, you probably have. You've been driving in the car, or maybe you've gone out for a long walk, and for a moment, you have that inner edge of panic that you may be lost. It's a horrible feeling, isn't it? When, particularly if you're in a different country. It's not so bad perhaps but if you're in a different country and you turn around and you think, oh, I'm not quite sure where I am here. I'm not quite sure how I need to get to the place where I'm going. That feeling of being lost. Well, when we're thinking about Jesus saying, I am the way, we're thinking about the one who comes to lead us out of our lostness, not geographically speaking, but spiritually speaking. The one who comes to lead us to the place where we are found and found in him, and our identity, who we are, is truly and really restored. So over the course of this passage, what we've read this morning, we have 4 people, let's say 5 people. Judas in the story has lost his way because he's stopped following the one who is the way. And so Judas in the story for sure is lost. We know that. He's obviously heard the call at Jesus at some point to follow him, but he's not following. Something's happened that he's no longer following. So Judas is one character. He's the betrayer. Peter is another character, and he's the outspoken one. He's the member of the party who's got the big mouth. He's the one who's prepared to step in where angels fear to tread. He's the one who's always prepared to speak up. There's always a person like that in the group, isn't there? And it's very irritating if you're one of the quiet ones, isn't it? Like me, for example. You're sitting around and you're the quiet, more reflective one, and somebody in the group has always got a big mouth, and they're always prepared to say their opinion. This is Peter. He's like the outspoken one. And then you've got Thomas. Thomas is in the story, and Thomas comes across as the questioner. I always think that Thomas gets a bit of a bad press, really, because he's labeled as the doubter, isn't he? And nobody wants to be known as the doubter, do they? Thomas the doubter, Stephen the doubter. I was the one who had faith. Somebody else said, I've got a bit of doubt in my life, actually. You never want to be labeled as Thomas, but I like Thomas because I think, if Thomas can make it, there's hope for us all, isn't there? Thomas gets to the end of the end of it. And then there's Philip. Now, Philip seems to come across as the appeaser, the one who's wanting to make things good. And there's always an appeaser in the party as well, isn't there? One who, wants to brush over and make... And John's sitting in on the story as well, of course, and he's an integral part of it. And so you've got these 5 different characters who are all following Jesus because Jesus is the way and he's the one to follow. But they're all at different stages of their journey, a bit like you and me. We're all at different stages, different levels. We're all different places of our journey of faith. And so we can perhaps identify with some of these characters. But whatever else we're going to say about these 5 characters, all male at this point, is that they're clueless. I mean, they're guys after all, aren't they? I mean, what can we say? I mean, if we brought some women into the mix, there may have been a bit more revelation. But these guys, they really don't know what's happening. They really don't know what Jesus is trying to do. They're trying to piece it together, but they're really struggling. And so they're like clueless in the situation. You know, a bit like watching the film with your friend who never quite grasps the plot. You know, you sort of get to the end and you talk about it afterwards. And I'm not going to make any names at this point. I'm not thinking about or speaking of anybody in our own household at this juncture. Honestly, I'm not. But, you know, it opens up some wonderful dialogues in the story. And that's why I'm trying to encourage us to read through the Gospel of John slowly and steadily. You know, sometimes when we get wrapped up with, I must read the Bible, I must read the Bible, I must read the Bible. And we read the Bible just so that we can put a tick in a box and say, I've read the Bible, I've read the Bible. Oh, I'm good today, I've read the Bible. But if we've not stopped and paused and reflected and allowed the Bible to live with us and live in us, then is there really any true value in that? So I think the beauty of taking a book like this and taking it over time is that we can stay with it and allow it to speak to us, because we're looking for detail, we're looking for nuance, we're looking for the Holy Spirit to speak to us. And so what you have happening here is a wonderful dialogue that begins to open up, which starts where we started today. I'm not referring to all of you. I know those who I have chosen, but this is to fulfill this passage. He who shared my bread has turned against me. I'm telling you now before it happens, so that when it does happen, you will believe that I am who I am. That's the whole purpose of this book, that we would get to believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the divine Son of God. Very truly, I tell you, whoever accepts anyone I send accepts me, and whoever accepts me accepts the one who sent me. After he had said this, Jesus was troubled in spirit and testified, very truly, I tell you, one of you is going to betray me. Go. I mean, let's take a bomb, should we? Let's put it in the middle of the room and let's set it off. That's what Jesus has done here. They're all sitting around at the Passover, reclining against one another, having a chat, enjoying a meal, and then Jesus comes in, opens up this dialogue. Read the text. Can you imagine the scene? Now, all of a sudden, the issue of betrayal has come onto the scene. What? What on earth is happening here? We didn't see that one coming. Try and imagine it. But actually, you don't have to imagine it. Because as the dialogue moves on into verse 22, it says, his disciples stared at one another at a loss to know which of them he meant. They didn't know. They had no idea. You see, we read the passage knowing it was Judas. You know, we're reading it and knowing, Judas, he was the betrayer, he was the horrible one, he was the nasty one. We read it with that information in mind. But these are like just disciples trying to get along with one another, following after Jesus. And then all of a sudden, he drops a bomb in the middle of the room and says, oh, by the way, one of you is going to betray me. And they're at a loss to know which one of them he meant. Now, one of them, the disciple whom Jesus loved, well, we know who that is then, don't we? This is John putting himself into the text, the one who Jesus loved. That's me, of course, boys, you all know that. Was reclining next to him. Well, of course he was, yeah. It's bound to be reclining next to him, isn't it? This is one of Jesus' favorites. So Simon Peter motioned to this disciple. Hey, ask him which one he means. And leaning back against Jesus, he asked him, Lord, who is it? You see, at this point, Judas didn't stick out. He wasn't sticking out like a sore thumb. Obviously, with all the rest thinking he's going to be the betrayer, he was one of the disciples. And so when Jesus drops the bombshell into the room and says, one of you is going to betray me, they're all looking around thinking, who's that then? Simon Peter, the outspoken one, motions over to John, the beloved one. Ask him, who is it going to be? And Jesus said, well, it's going to be the one who, when I've dipped the bread in the cup and I give the bread to, that's the one that's going to betray me. And so the story goes on. They got no idea. So Peter and John get into action. Simon Peter motions to John to ask Jesus who's the question. And the whole text is loaded. John has to remind us that this disciple, the one leaning close to the one Jesus is closest to, in verse 26 it says, Jesus answered, "It is the one to whom I will give this piece of bread." Then dipping the piece of bread, he gave it to Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot. As soon as Judas took the bread, Satan entered into him. But then we go back to him being at loss as to who the one it might be. So Judas is not sticking out at this point. He's not the obvious candidate as far as anybody else is concerned in the room. Jesus gives him this bread. He eats it, and as he eats the bread, the Satan enters into him. And so something dark is going off here. At that point in the story, I have to stop and ask myself the question, how has he got to this place? You see, it's not just happened overnight, has it? I mean, I know we talk about predestined and all this sort of stuff, but how emotionally has he got to a place of following Jesus, but then getting lost in the process of following him, to the extent that he finally agrees to become the betrayer? Well, John gives us a little bit of a window because he's obviously writing this book and compiling it post-events. And so he's looking back at it now with hindsight, and he's putting it together. And earlier, it says there in John 13, verse 29, since Judas had charge of the money, some thought Jesus was telling him to buy what was needed for the festival or to give something to the poor. So even now, all this happened, they're not assuming this on Judas. They're thinking, Jesus just had a quiet word with him, and now he's gone out to do something that Jesus has asked him to do. They're still not really into it. It's only after the event, when John comes to write his gospel, that he further hints at Judas, and his descent into betrayal becomes clearer. And to get a picture into this, we have to go back a couple of stories to John chapter 12, where it says, 6 days before the Passover, Jesus came to Bethany, where Lazarus lived, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. Here a dinner was given in Jesus' honor. Martha served, while Lazarus was among those reclining at the table with him. Then Mary took about a pint of pure nard, an expensive perfume. She poured it on Jesus' feet and wiped his feet with her hair, and the house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. But one of the disciples, Judas Iscariot, who was later to betray him, this is Jesus writing the gospel after the events, objected. Why wasn't this perfume sold and the money given to the poor? It was worth a year's wages. And John gives us this little insight. He did not say this because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. As keeper of the money bag, he used to help himself to what was put into it. John obviously didn't know this at the time. He didn't know it when the conversation was taking place in the room. This has only come to his attention later on. And so he chooses to bring it into the gospel as he writes it, to give us a little bit of a window as to Judas's descent to betrayal. He becomes a thief before he becomes. And so somewhere along the pathway, Judas is losing his way in the one who proclaims, I am the way, and he's discovering that himself is getting lost. And John wants you to know this, and so at the end of the little dialogue, he says something which I think is quite illuminating. As soon as Judas had taken the bread, he went out, and it was night. Judas steps into the darkness, where the mission of Jesus is to bring you in light. Judas has lost his way. And we need to think about that. He's one of the main characters in this story, but he has now lost his way. The whole mood is starting to change, and we're now some distance removed from the miracles that we read earlier in the book, and we're on a different path because Jesus is making known who he is and what he's going to be doing, and his journey to the cross and his death and ultimate resurrection. And so enters Peter. Judas has gone out, and he's gone out into the night. Peter stays in the room, along with the rest of the other disciples. Now, Peter's an interesting character. And he's an interesting character because in John's gospel, he's there right at the beginning. And in John's gospel, he's there right at the end. In John chapter 1, Peter appears. And in John 21, which is the last chapter of the gospel, Peter appears again. And he has numerous things to say throughout the course of this gospel. Peter's an important character. He's an important person. And again, it's useful to think about that. Peter's been part of the story right from the beginning. And so perhaps he thinks he knows better than anybody else. I was one of the first disciples, he'd think. I've been around Jesus a long time. I'm very close to him, you know. And so he maybe assumes a role upon himself that Jesus feels, oh, I'm not quite sure you can make that, mate. And he makes that clear to Peter. Because Peter thinks he can go the distance, and Jesus reminds him that he can't. Peter is going to have his own journey of being lost in this process. But the difference between Peter and Judas, as we read through the scriptures, is this, that Peter finds his way back to the way again. He's reinstated at the end of the gospel. And it's a beautiful story as it unfolds. In John chapter 1, verse 40, we read, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, was one of the two who heard that John had said and who had followed Jesus. The first thing Andrew did was to find his brother Simon and tell him, we found the Messiah, that is the Christ. And he brought him to Jesus. Jesus looked at him and said, you are Simon, son of John. You will be called Cephas, which when translated is Peter, which we know as rock. Oh, he's feeling quite good about himself now because not only has he met Jesus, but Jesus has given him a different name, and he's called him Peter, which means rock. He's thinking, I'm a real man of substance now. You know, he's not called me wood or plastic or polystyrene. You know, he's given me a name that actually means rock. This is a man of. And so, understandably, being with Jesus right from the beginning, you could see how he would assume the role of being able to speak out on matters of importance. And he did. And he does. In many ways, he shows himself to be dependable. After Jesus' declaration that he was the bread of life, many of the followers of Jesus left him, as you know, and went on their own way. And Jesus turns around to the close disciples and says to them, so what are you going to do? Are you going to leave as well? It's Peter who stands up. It's Peter who speaks out. And it's Peter who says, Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life. We have come to believe and to know that you are the Holy One of God. We've come to believe it. We didn't at the start, but we've come to believe it, which is what John is trying to get across. Can we come to believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Messiah, the Son of God? Peter wasn't going anywhere, or so he thought. He was up to the task of following Jesus in any situation. That was his firm intention. Judas is a different character altogether. Was it his love of money that ultimately led him down a negative path so that he ended up losing his way? Well, maybe there is inference into that when you think of Jesus' teaching, a man cannot serve both God and money. Maybe that was something of his descent into the terrible situation in which ultimately he finds himself. But Peter is a different character. He's full of good intention. He really wants to live for Christ and to live up for Christ. And so he's prepared to make the bold declaration, I will follow you, Jesus, wherever you go. Really? Really? Have you really got that strength inside yourself, Peter? Are you really so self-determined? Are you really able to position yourself so strongly that you can make that affirmation? Peter, Peter, before the cock crows, you're going to find yourself in denial. Another layer of the revelation of who you are as a person will be made known to you, and you will feel lost in that moment. Like sometimes you and I do. You feel like we've lost our way. And the text says, when the cock crowed, he went out and he wept bitterly. Oh God, that level of disappointment, that level of failure that he must have carried at that point. This is Peter. Peter who makes the declaration, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. But John doesn't paint Peter out in the darkness. The next time we find Peter is that he's around the fire in the court of the chief priest. He's still close to where Jesus is. Peter's pain comes from thinking he was bigger and stronger than what he was. Thinking that he could do more for Jesus than what Jesus could do for him. Peter was on the pathway for a painful lesson. A painful lesson. A painful lesson of abandonment, a painful lesson of failure, a painful lesson of knowing that I'm not the one who supports Jesus, but Jesus is the one who supports me. But Peter's story doesn't end there. Peter's story is beautiful, it's wonderful, it's amazing. In chapter 13 it says, Simon Peter asked him, Lord, where are you going? Jesus replied, where I am going you cannot come now, but you will follow later. And Peter asked, Lord, why can't I follow you now? I will lay down my life for you. There's nothing wrong with Peter's intention. He was spontaneous, he was strong, he was pure-hearted. He was the rock after all. But even rocks get broken. And especially when you've been targeted, which Peter had been. He'd been targeted. Of all the characters in the New Testament, in the Gospels, there are only two people who have particular references to the devil being involved in their lives. One was Judas, and Satan entered him. And the other was Peter. Because this is what Jesus said about Peter. Simon, Simon, Satan has asked to sift you like wheat. But I've prayed for you, Simon, that your faith may not fail. And when you've turned back, strengthen your brothers. This is a man who had the potential to lose his way. But in the moment of his failure, in the moment where he had the potential to step into the darkness, Jesus Christ brings him back to the light. It's a wonderful story. A wonderful, wonderful story. John would never have Peter walking out into the night. He might deny the Christ 3 times whilst warming himself in the courtyard of the high priest. But the next time we meet Peter, where do we meet him next? He's running to the tomb, which by now is empty, and the stone is rolled away. That's the next time you meet him in John's Gospel. He's denied him, he's broken, he's smashed, but the next time this character appears in the story, what is he doing? He's running towards the tomb. And you know the beauty of John's Gospel is this, and with this we'll finish with a song. It's this. John's Gospel doesn't finish with the resurrection. My God, why not? You can't get better than that, can you? John's gospel does not finish with the story of the resurrection. It finishes with the reinstatement of Peter. The one who, in the beginning, John chapter 1, heard the call of Jesus, will you come and follow after me? And in John chapter 21, Jesus turns to Peter and says, follow me. And Peter says, I will. Why? Because you are the way, you are the truth, and you are the life. Which we've not actually got to today, so we'll get to that next week. But it feels important to enter into the lives of some of these characters because we read over them, and sometimes we need to read into them. Because as we read into them, we see something of ourselves there as well, which is both terrifying on the one hand and exhilarating on the other. Let's worship. Thanks, Paul.
Really, thank you. See your face. I see your face in every sunrise. The colors of the morning are inside your eyes. The world awakens in the light of the day. I look up to the sky and say, you're beautiful. I see your power in the moonlit night, where planets are in motion and galaxies are bright. We are amazed in the light of the stars. It's all proclaiming who you are. You're beautiful. I see you there hanging on a tree. You bled and then you died and then you rose again for me. Now you are sitting on your heavenly throne. Soon we'll be coming home. You're beautiful. You're beautiful. I see your face. You're beautiful. You're beautiful. You're beautiful. I see your face, Lord. I see your face. You're beautiful. You're beautiful. You're beautiful. I see your face, Lord. I see your face. You're beautiful. You're beautiful.
afternoon. But I just want to encourage you, and I just felt like with Stephen bringing out about Peter and how Judas, betrayed Jesus. And I just felt, God was encouraging me at times. We don't want to meet, and like this morning, I had a little bit of a ding-dong with Colin. I thought, right, I don't want to go to church. And I just thought, no, that's the wrong attitude, to press in. And sometimes it's not easy, whether you're at home or whether you're here. It's not easy to press in. But we need to run the race. We need to encourage one another. Whether it's at home, you can send messages to one another. I just want to finish with Hebrews 12, 1-3. Therefore, since we are surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and, let me put my glasses on. And these are great, but when your eyes are not good, that hinders, and the sin that easily entangles. And let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sits now down at the right hand of the throne of God. So consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. Bless you.
Amen. Thank you, Ruth. Sharp.
A great morning, yes?
Yeah.
Just carry on for a second, Paul. I was just sitting there and I thought, I wonder if some of us identify with Judas, and actually we feel that we've lost our way a little, and we don't really know where to go, and we don't really know where to turn. And if that's you, I just wonder if you'd like to come down and we'll pray for you, and pray that you would know that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, and in him we have life. So it's so brave and it's a bold thing to do, and maybe that's not for anyone, but I just felt it was on my heart and I wanted to share it. So maybe we just sing again. I know we've run over time, but let's just sing that last verse again and sing.
When we arrive at eternity's shore, where death is just a memory and tears are no more, we'll enter wedding bells ring, your bride will come together and we'll sing, you're beautiful, you're beautiful. I see your face, you're beautiful, you're beautiful, you're beautiful. Last time. I see your face, you're beautiful, you're beautiful, you're beautiful.
Yeah, Jesus, we thank you. We thank you that we can come here and gather this morning. We thank you that you are the way, the truth, and the life. And you never leave us, and you will never forsake us. We thank you that we can meet and worship you so freely and come into your presence, and that you would accept us just as we are. And as we go about our week this week, we pray for opportunities to share you with other people, to bring your light into every situation.
Hey everyone, thank you for participating and being church with us today. If you'd like to watch the service back, then you can do so shortly. We'll be posting a link online at our website, hopechurchnottingham.org/live. And if you've been encouraged by our service today, why not share the link with a friend? And if you've got any questions or comments about our gathering, or if we can pray for you in any way at all, then we'd love to hear from you. Please do get in touch via the email address shown on the screen. For those of us who give financially during the Sunday service, we can now do this online at hopechurchnottingham.org/giving. We've got loads of stuff going on during the week on our Facebook page, updates and encouragement, so please do like and follow us on there. We'll be live again next week at 11 a.m. on both Facebook and YouTube, and we hope to see you there. So I wish you a really, really good week. We continue to hold you in our prayers. May each of you know the goodness, the comfort and the encouragement of Christ as you go about your life this week. So that's it from me and the Hope Church team today. Stay safe and God bless.